Okay, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. I suppose we should start right at the beginning. And how did you get involved with writing musicals?
Gosh, that's a really good question. How did I get involved with writing musicals? I think the I read somewhere recently that the artist is somebody where the child survived. It's that
Mhm.
person whose child survived. And writing musicals started as a child for me. I um, had a puppet theatre. I know that sounds very middle class, but my dad worked for Jewson's,
Hmm.
and he he built me a puppet theatre, and I used to when I used to save up my pocket money and buy those Pelham puppets. They're quite collectible now, but they were quite
Hmm.
expensive. Took a lot of uh, saving, but I built a collection of puppets, and I used to write the script and make the scenery and the music, record the music
Hmm.
on a tape, and put on puppet shows from about the age of 6 right up until I was about 14, when other kids were playing football probably.
And so from there, then obviously you've gone now into Frank's Closet. So what is Frank's Closet? What is it about?
Frank's Closet. I mean, I'm Frank's Closet. What is it about? I mean, there isn't really a story, I don't think. It's really just a chance for people to dress up and sing show
Hmm.
tunes.
Oh.
And I mean, I love the idea of the closet and the whole idea of, you know, uh, the closet being a very kind of scary place on
Mhm.
some, but also being a place where we get to find out who we are and what we like, and where we're able to kind of shut out the world.
Hmm.
And the very idea of being in the closet suggests that we care about what other people think,
Hmm.
you know, which
And
is an incredible burden to have in
hmm,
life.
totally. And obviously you've got that sort of duality of, like you said about dressing up and having fun of the closet of as a standard, dressing up where you put your clothes. But then you've got the sort of the queer closet, as you're talking about, sort of being ashamed or not coming out. How does that queer element then translate into the show?
Oh, it's absolutely embedded in it, and I think queer on a queer. The word queer has had so many kind of different has got so many different meanings. And when I was growing up, it was definitely a slur and an insult, and still is, in some parts of the world. And it's not that long ago that I have been called a fucking queer by
Mhm.
somebody aggressively. So it still happens. And I think using that word and disarming it, I'm allowed to use it, you're allowed to use
Mhm.
it. And we do use it in the show, not a lot, but a couple of times. But I think the queerness of Frank's Closet goes back to its music hall origins, because it really was written as a music hall show. It was specifically written for Hoxton Hall, which is one of the last remaining English music halls. There's only 3 living music
Oh.
halls left. Okay, so it just so happened that we wrote this show for Frank's Closet, for Hoxton Hall, and the people that ran it were, it was in the days when Hoxton was still it was very much an open door type
Mm.
community. So the music hall was really like a chance for the working people to have a voice against what I suppose was an industrial age, where people were being sort of industrialized,
Mm.
really, and class was rampant. And just that thing of giving people a stage and an opportunity to turn it all on its head. And in music hall, you had women dressed as men and men dressed as women. And of course, in this country, we have a tradition of panto,
Yeah.
which is also has, is a cousin of the music hall. And so Frank's Closet really comes from that kind of queering of how ridiculous it is to be anybody.
Mm. Fabulous. And so for people who don't know, what can you expect from Fran's Closet? What will we, if you're in the audience, what will you experience?
Well, first of all, I think Frank's Closet, what we found was that everybody that came to see it, whatever
Yeah.
however you identify. Let's face it, at the end of the day, we're all human beings,
Yeah.
and And everyone is welcome to this show. And when we originally did Frank, Frank was played by a woman, and we had Debbie McGee. And and I think the fact that this cast, it's a young, really talented cast, and they're going to do something new with it. And I feel like you will be blown away. But everyone will relate to whoever you are of that idea of sometimes there comes a time in your life where you literally have to clear out your
Yeah.
closet.
Wow.
What you find in the back of your closet can be both good and bad. And some of those things that you're going to find in your closet, you realize, oh my God, if I hadn't had this, I would not have survived.
Hmm.
Frank, what the way he survived was through his relationship that he forged with these seven incredible women who
Hmm.
divas, I suppose, through records, through their films, and all of that, through their
Hmm.
theatre. Yeah.
So you mentioned those seven sort of divas. How did you select which seven you wanted to shine a light on? Are they important to you particularly, or how did they get selected?
That's a good question. I mean, Rhys, who are your favorite? 'Cause basically, I didn't think about anyone other than myself when I was writing. And I always think you should tell the truth, and I can't
Mhm.
tell someone else the truth. I can only tell my own. So, yeah, who are your? So I've got my divas. Who would be in your? Who would come out of your closet?
Oh, I think there's got to be Gloria Gaynor in there, somewhere in there. Cher. Oh, ooh, I don't know if I could do seven, but yeah, definitely Gloria Gaynor and Cher.
I bet you could. But we originally there was six divas in the show, and when you put a musical show on, usually you book the space and then work backwards,
Mm,
and and I suppose we were limited in the time we had when we initially did it. Doing this production, it's been brilliant because it's really given us a chance to go back and explode it and then put it all back
yeah,
together. And in that process, there is a seventh diva, and it makes sense to have seven because there's seven notes in the scale, 7 days in the week.
yeah.
It's a kind of mystic number, seven colors in the rainbow. So it's going to be wonderful to introduce a new diva and some new songs and
Mm,
things. It's really fully formed now, Frank's Closet.
oh,
It's become a teenager, basically.
yeah.
It's
So
probably got a, yeah.
who are some of the divas that were included in the first iteration?
Okay, so there is Mari Lloyd, and the reason we had Mari Lloyd is because she actually played on the stage at Hoxton Hall. That was one of her things. So it was like bringing Mari Lloyd back
Mm,
onto that. It's really magical. Carmelani did that originally, and then Russell Whitehead did it, and Luke, who is playing the diva for this production, he's done so much research into these divas because you know I suppose every generation will have their
mm,
diva, and these are my generation of divas. But Mari Lloyd, we have Julie Andrews, of course,
yes.
who, I feel like isn't so much a diva. You don't think of Julie Andrews as a diva, but in Frank's Closet, she is.
Mm,
And then Ethel Merman. Do you know who Ethel
yes.
Merman
I
is?
know very little, but I do know who she is. Yes.
So there's more work. So there's a bit of homework to do about Ethel Merman. But of course, Ethel Merman's so interesting because, at 79, she made a disco album.
Mm,
So we definitely kind of reference that because we love the idea of Ethel and disco. And then we've got Karen Carpenter, who is sort of a sort of a almost like an anti-diva in some ways because she wasn't really interested in. Well, maybe she was, but I think she was happier in a bit of a cardigan
yeah.
than a big flowery. Well, side. And then Judy Garland, of course. I think, obviously
Yeah.
Judy. When we originally did the show, it was the 40th anniversary of Judy's death and the Stonewall riots. But those two things obviously
Mm, yeah.
coincided. So it was a really celebration. It was all kind of originally kind of Judy was the focus of the show, and maybe that will still happen. She
Mm,
definitely the 11 o'clock number.
mm. So you've already mentioned that there's a new iteration of Frank's Closet, and we'll get to that in a minute. But for the first time that you put it onto stage, what was that like putting the show together?
Well, I mean, I think it's the most musical theatre, as you know, is probably one of the most collaborative
Mhm.
art forms. So what I love about it is that, everyone is comes into that space on the level of a sort of equality. It's like the choreographer is going to see that show kinetically and how it moves and how the pictures and the storytelling through body and movement
Mm.
and the way that a choreographer listens to music is I mean, it makes me quite emotional because they understand music on a level that I don't really
Mm.
understand it. I see their work, I'm like, oh my God. And so you've got the choreographer, you've got the director who's really storytelling and understands that. And Sasha Regan, who is directing the show, does a lot of the work in the room with the artists,
Mm.
she really draws from asking them to bring stuff into it. So it must be such an exciting
Mm.
process cast. Um, and um, and then you've got the lighting director who, if you think about theatre, it's all about putting
Yeah.
people in the dark and then shedding light on things. So the lighting, sound, and I've worked with Catherine Phelps. Catherine Phelps has done the design for the show. She did the original design, which was very site specific for
Mm.
Hoxton.
Yeah.
Going into the Union, it's a different space, but she's brought the spirit of that design in, and created the most incredible closet, which I cannot wait for you to see. Are you coming to the show?
I'm planning to. Obviously, I know you sent over the dates, so I really want to.
Just yeah, obviously, I'm sure we can give you a staff guest discount.
Oh, thank you so much. So on that first version of the show, what was the feedback like? How did the audience react to the show?
But they seem to love it, and that's the thing. I think when you're so immersed in putting on a show that you forget that actually, oh my God, there's
Yeah.
an audience here. Where did they come from, and who are these people? And I guess it is wonderful when they're laughing and crying and clapping and we had a really amazing reaction. There's something about Frank's Closet that is, one of the lines in Ethel Merman's song is stuck together with starlight and glue. How Frank's it's how Frank it feels, because it does feel like, it's one of those things that anyone that steps into it. And I forgot to mention Stephen, who is creating the divas. He was
Mm.
Danny LaRue, one of the great drag performers of his day. He was Danny
Mm.
LaRue's dresser and started working with Danny in the
Yeah.
60s when he was a teenager. And so he comes from that old world almost of the music hall of what was female
Mm.
impersonation. And Frank's Closet, it was pre-RuPaul, it was kind of pre-Grinder, pre-Instagram, and so in a way, I think it's quite an old-fashioned show in some ways. And we're not ignoring the past 15 years, but I think what this new cast are doing with it is that it's going to be interesting. But Stephen will, the way he creates the divas, because the costume changes are very quick, going from Judy Garland into Agneta from ABBA.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a quick. I mean, I will be blown away. But so yeah, so he is working his magic, and one of the very special things, and I think I can announce this, is that the dresser Dolly was one of the original Gaiety girls.
Wow.
Frank had his Gaiety girls,
Mm.
and he was the original Gaiety girl, and he's an incredibly talented performer. But I asked him because he recently has been dressing. He was dressing on the Sondheim show that was on that just closed last month, and I called him, and I originally I wanted him to be in the show as a Gaiety girl, but Sasha's like, why don't we just do something completely new, which I think was the right
Mm.
call. But then I said, Dolly, would you come and like support backstage? And that's why this spirit of equality in
Mm.
Frank's Closet, it doesn't matter who you are in that show,
Is
everyone's role is completely intrinsic to its happening.
mm. And through this process, you've started to record. Well, you have recorded an album. What was it like putting together the album, the recording?
That's a really good question. Well, this production wouldn't be happening without that. And what the album was the recordings of the original show. So when we did it at Hoxton Hall, because I'm a musician at heart, and I had a music studio next door to Hoxton Hall, I used to do music for ads and things. I really put the focus and the budget into the music. So we recorded, or the sound designer recorded about 10 shows over 2 different productions. And so we didn't have enough microphones. So some night the trumpet player would have the microphone, and then the other night Debbie McGee would have the microphone. So over the course of the nights, we kind of got everyone's signal. And because the songs were based on track, because I had worked in cruise ship entertainment, it meant that I could synchronize trumpets to track and voices, it all synchronized. And so during the lockdown, I got a little bit of money from the Arts Council, went to Ibiza for 5 months and put together the Frank's Closet live album, and then skip forward to 2022, the Cock Tavern in London. We had a listening room with all the original cast and crew and super fans. Played this recording that nobody had heard the songs for 13 years with the audience clapping and just, and it was a really, really magical experience. And then we had a kind of, people sharing their experience, and it felt like it all came alive again through sound. And in the audience was Kareem and Stephen, who had contacted me through the visual archive, which is on Instagram, Frank's Closet Show. And they were there, and then they were like, we've got to do this. There's so much, it's so good. And here we are 18 months later, about to go up.
Yes, and so you mentioned this upcoming show. So do you want to talk about that for a bit? How's that feeling?
It feels good. I mean, I've had to really kind of, it's like anything in life when you kind of become visible, because I think most creative people, like to isolate, and I definitely, I'm happy in a basement with headphones on, and the phone switched off. I mean, but at the same time, I think putting on a big musical theatre show means becoming visible. And also what you get to see in that process is, because you're coming out of isolation, you're working with a lot of other people, that I've got to see my control freakery. God, you mean you're not going to have that color lipstick? And I've had to really step back and go like, well, through the help of the producer, I have to say, calming me down, but just like, it's time to kind of really hand it over and trust that in the hands, like I was going back to everyone's department, they all know what they're doing. All I've had to really focus on is my bit, which is the music, getting the tracks. We've got this amazing musical director, Anto, who he's worked with the cast and the way that it's sounding through his, just being there. But we've got a kind of, he'll send me his notes at the end of the day, and then I will sort of send back. So it's all just really me being, I'm just a bloke with a bit of a kind of, with the keyboard, I'm on the back end basically.
And so for those who saw the first show, is there a lot of differences in the version? Is there things that are the same, different?
I mean, I think it will be different, but the heart of the piece, basically, it's an eve of a wedding. Frank is on the eve of his wedding, and he's having to clear out his closet. There's been a misunderstanding. He thinks that because he's entering into this new relationship and cohabitation, that he's going to have to lose something of himself, which happens when we enter any kind of relationship. There's always part of us that we may feel that we have to abandon, and really Frank's Closet is about the anxiety of that abandonment. But fortunately the divas each have a very specific, powerful message for Frank that kind of gets him over the threshold.
And so where can people get tickets for the upcoming show?
Very wise question, thank you very much. We're in a business. Yes. Well, the Union Theatre website, and tickets start at 25 quid. We've got a student rate. If you're a student, the £20 tickets. And we've even got like little tables where you can have a glass of wine and
Oh,
sort of be almost on the set. And I think
mm,
they're 40 quid. And I mean, what can you get for 40 quid? It's
yeah.
almost a coffee in
Yes,
Costa's.
totally. And where can people stay up to date with the show and what's going on with the show in general?
So yeah, we're doing this run at the Union, and I think really we're just focusing on getting it up. We've got one more week of rehearsals, so all the detail comes together this week. I think it started like a bit like a painting, with the
Mm,
lines, and now we're going into really the
yeah.
detail. The set being built, the costumes. We've got the original costumes, were somehow stored by Sue Mann, who's designed the makeup. She was the only one of us that had a stable home, I think, over the past 10 years. So she and so the original costumes are going to be there. There's obviously some tweaks to those costumes, and there's our new diva, but that dress is being specifically made up in Manchester. It's all the dresses are recreations of original dresses that the divas were kind of, were
Yeah.
inspired, say, by original dresses.
Mm. And obviously, if people want to drop you a follow on Instagram, there's the Frank Instagram page.
Frank's Closet Show.
Mhm.
We've got 900 followers, so we're
Wow.
hoping 1,000 by the show, and by the end of the show, we're hoping to have 4,000. So if you could just put a word in for
Yeah,
us.
I will put the link in the description below so people can just scroll down and click away. Um, I have one final question. I have come to the end. So my final question is, what advice do you have for young people looking to get into musical theatre?
That's a great question. My feeling is that there's so much access to musical theatre at the moment. Just remember that if you're in the UK, that we are one of the greatest
Mhm.
creators of musical theatre. And that if you want to become part of it as a creator of musical theatre, my advice to you is to really follow your own voice,
Mhm.
to what do you love? What music do you love? This whole thing, I think, of coming out really is a chance for us as a young person to really not care too much about what other people think. It requires enormous courage, but from that courage, I think it connects us with who we truly are. And if you're a theatre maker of any kind, having that voice of knowing who you are, what music you love, is going to really serve you.
Mhm.
And just start where you are. A musical can be one person, and you can start with a read through it. It doesn't have to go from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
Just gently and start with a reading, and use
Yeah.
other platforms if you want to. But I think, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there
Mm.
to support.
And like you said, it's all about that collaboration as well. You may do it on your own, but you may work with people who just give feedback or design. There's thousands of people involved in big scale musicals, and just getting your work out there is the only way that people are gonna get involved or see it or listen to it.
That's right. And I mean, people like you, Rhys, as well, just like, opening a window into
Mhm.
new into this work. I just want to say thank you for creating that window, because without it, we wouldn't be able to connect
Mm.
with the audience. And I think that's what it's all about for us. It's about connection and having that shared experience.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. Obviously, I'm planning. I genuinely am planning to come see the show. So I'm very excited to see it and see where it ends up. But thank you so much,
Well, thank you, Rhys. And I look forward to meeting you.
and speak to you soon.
All the best. Take care.